Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. Hopefully you're excited to chat report writing. I am a super weird home inspector in that I partly got into home inspection because I thought it would be fun to write reports. So I know that makes me kind of an anomaly maybe, but I think report writing always really interested me. And it's funny, I wanted to be a writer when I was younger, and I kind of joke that I'm probably one of the best paid writers in America now as a home inspector. You can hardly make a living as a writer anymore. So it all worked out to my benefit. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen? I'm sharing
We
my
we
screen.
can see your screen,
Cool.
yes.
So this is a 2 hour presentation normally. I did my best to kind of winnow it down and shorten it. So we'll try to get right to stuff. Somebody's mic is on and kind of giving us an echo. I don't know whose that is.
That might be me.
Cool. Well, let me advance the slide. There we go. All right. So we'll get into report writing. I've got a few different things. I've got what I call some hot licks of just a few report writing tips that we'll do. And then I want to spend a lot of time on workflow. I really think report writing is the essence of our business. It's everything. It is our business, right? If our software might hold all of our knowledge and our codes and all of everything we know, the report that we deliver is like our greatest marketing. It's what all of our clients see. So I think it's worth putting a huge amount of effort into report writing. So anyway, I'll give you a couple tips. You may not like these tips. Like one of the things I have learned doing home inspections and going around the country talking software or report writing and software is everybody does it differently. So I use the little Keith Richards joke of some hot licks of Keith Richards made his career kind of stealing hot licks from other people and turning them into his own thing. And I'm going to give you guys some of my hot licks here today. You could decide you hate them and it's disco and you don't want to roll with it, or you might think it's a hot lick and you want to steal it and make it yours. And that's good. I hope to present enough little licks that you guys, everybody can take away a little something here. Um, so background information, and this gets me a little bit to when I read other people's inspection reports and I kind of look at inspection reports in the industry, one of the things I'm constantly amazed about is how many things still are a legacy way of doing things that date back to before we had software. Anybody could raise their hands, but anybody, I mean, I started, I've been inspecting for 23 or 4 years. So when I started, digital cameras were kind of a brand new thing. And one of my first mentors used to staple Polaroid pictures to like carbonless copy things. I mean, I can't tell you how difficult it was to try to write a report when I started. And we're living in this sort of gilded age of report writing now. Uh, but in any event, background information, like a lot of the old way of doing things, we would have a block of information. Did anybody give away a book in the old days? I mean, that was like the real extreme. With every inspection, you would like hand this like book of how to maintain your house and all this stuff. And then like with certain software programs, I noticed, when we digitized it, it would end up with like paragraphs of information at the top. But it always bugged me. One of my early systems that I used, there was always a stucco comment, like a disclaimer for stucco, and I couldn't ever remove it. And if I was doing a house that didn't have stucco, it would drive me crazy, as I didn't want anything to do with stucco. And in fact, if I were an attorney reviewing a report, one of the first things I would do would look for things like that and be like, well, you said there was stucco here, but there's no stucco on this house, is there? So to that end, one of my hot licks first tips is just use background information that actually applies to the building you're inspecting and is not generic. And then the second piece here to me is one of the things I decided early on was to try to get rid of that language of fear that is built into a lot of stuff. And it doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of CYA kind of information in reports, but I think I try to phrase things in more helpful terms that feels more helpful. So I'll get out of this and I'll just kind of show you what I do. So I thought electrical grounding and bonding would be interesting to talk about, because that's actually, I think, one of the hardest things that we inspect, right? It's a system that it's very difficult to like prove that it works, you know? So I broke my electrical bonding and grounding into two different sections, and I have these automatic connections that just every time I say present could not confirm, if I find some elements of a grounding system. And I have kind of an overview comment that explains like this is a pretty tricky system to inspect because I can't turn it on like a furnace. And then what I do is I add specifics. So I have a note if I found a grounding rod, or if I found multiple grounding rods, or a U for ground, and then I put pictures in with this. And I don't know if you guys inspect grounding and bonding in this way, but I've developed a complete knee-jerk reaction where if I see a bonding or grounding connection, I'm reaching for my phone to take a picture of it. And I document it. I put every connection I can find, I put into my report. And that procedure, that workflow really helped me. When I started doing that, I started being a lot more confident that I was actually inspecting the grounding and bonding system. Because again, without doing that, I would kind of leave and I'd be writing the report later and be like, God, did I look for that? So anyway, that's sort of how, and I do the same thing with bonding here. I've got an overview note that goes in every report, and then if I found bonding at the water pipes and the gas pipes, I'm going to hit those, and those are just holders to put my pictures. But anyway, if you're newer to inspecting, it seems like we have a huge gang on here, so there could be some serious veterans that maybe do something like this. But if you're newer, I bet it wouldn't shock me if you're kind of overlooking inspecting the grounding and bonding system. It's easy to do. And if you get in the habit of just taking a picture every time, I found that that helps for me. Cool. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint here. Pro tip number two, and this is kind of something I wanted to share from writing. So before I got into inspecting, I was taking a lot of writing classes. I wanted to be a writer. And there's a kind of cliche about great writing is that you're showing, not telling. So this is kind of a silly example, but telling, you would say Michael was terribly afraid of the dark, right? And it just kind of lays there. It's not visceral, you don't feel it. Showing is as his mother switched off the light and left the room, Michael tensed. He huddled under the covers and gripped the sheets and held his breath as the wind brushed past the curtain, right? So that's this whole sort of descriptive emotional thing that Michael's going through, that he's afraid of the dark. And I know this is silly. We're not like, literary writers writing our reports, but we can learn a lot from this. There's very powerful tools in here. I mean, these are the tools that writers use when you go to a movie, and that these people have written a screenplay that suck you into the movie and you're like grabbing your seat. Like that doesn't happen by accident. This is like really clever writers that have made this sort of visceral thing for you to experience. So, and I would argue that we really can use some of that kind of thing in our reports. So why does showing matter? Here's a question for everybody that I didn't put in Hollis's poll, but how many of our clients, let's see, I think I have it on the next slide. How many of our clients have read our standards of practice or understand the limitations we face? Right? I mean, none. You know,
Zero.
does, right? Yeah, zero. Thank you, Steve. I mean, nobody, and they're not going to. They're not going to take the time to like learn about what our challenges are and why we have all these sort of limitations and so forth. So another problem I found is that the standards of practice, there's a gap that exists between the standards of practice and client expectations. Clients think that you're going to, like, as a home inspector, evaluate the structure of the building, right? And so it was what I learned early on is in my reports and in my verbal communication, I needed to bridge the gap between what I can possibly do and what the client thinks I do, so that there's not miscommunication or sort of failed expectations, because that's how people can get mad at you. And my entire, like, early on in my career, I had somebody get mad at me and I didn't sleep for like 3 days. And I've spent the last like 22 years figuring out how I could like do this job and try to never have anybody complain. So a lot of this is my own psychosis. But so what I found is by using my inspection report and my on-site time with my workflow and showing the client what I was doing, I could earn their trust in a way that showed them the SOP without having to tell them, if that makes sense. So it's kind of that same feeling of like everybody love like get out of the crawl space looking like this, and the client loves you, right? You've earned their trust when you come out looking like this. They're like, man, that guy took one for the team and went down there and got all dirty and dealt with all the spiders and so forth. So I want my clients, when they're reading their report, I don't want them to forget this. I actually want to like try to repeat this feeling that they have throughout my report when they're reading it. And so, when it comes to it, like I think this is the best liability protection we have, is that your client trusts you. If they trust you, they're not going to sue you. As soon as they stop trusting you, then suddenly they don't believe anything that you said. That can happen. It's this cascading failure. So everything that I do in my reports and my presentation, my on-site time, is designed to not just earn their trust once, but try to maintain it in the face of the fact that I know I'll miss something. Right. I want to try to not lose that trust when something comes up that I missed. So I think showing your inspection process, and I'll give you guys an example of one here in just a second, but I think it solves a lot of problems. So one of the things is interesting. I asked the question, Hollis, how many people do pre-listing inspections? Like what percentage, in our poll question, did we get some data there?
Well, we got 54%.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. About half. I
Well, no,
mean,
no, 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 wait, no, 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 wait a minute, because you
oh,
asked different percentages, right? So
oh,
it looked
yeah.
like the 54% was the 25%. So
Okay.
30%, 36% were zero,
Mm-hmm.
54%, which is the peak, were 54% at 25%, 48%, 4% of our respondents were at 50%, 5% of our respondents were at 75%, and 2% were at 100%. So a couple people, that's all they do apparently.
That's interesting. So, and how amazing is that? I mean, 10 years ago, do you think we would have seen that, Hollis?
Pre-listing, I tell you what, I've seen a lot of people capture that market, and there doesn't seem to be that much of a market for it, in
Yeah,
my
it
experience.
it depends where you are. I would say for me that's been about, I mean, it's changed now because the market's different, but for me, I spent 4 years where I didn't work for a buyer unless they're buying new construction or some kind of off-market deal. There was just no time to get one for if you were a buyer. So this is totally market driven, but I thought that would be an interesting question. I don't know if in the chat you could put that up if people want to look at the results, they might be interested in it. But in any event, I do tons of pre-listing inspections, and if I do a really nice house, I can't just sort of deliver a report that says satisfactory with no other information in it. So I really love, thanks, Hollis, that's awesome. um, I really loved kind of being able to show everybody, whoever reads the report, that I looked at things. So, and it shows the client what you did for them. It earns the trust whoever's reading the report. And I think this can be your best marketing as a home inspector, is just, having these reports that really show what you're doing. So I'll bring up a job that I did. This was a super fancy house, it was millions of dollars. It was in great shape, and there really just wasn't that much wrong with it. I think I had like 4 repair items or something. So, but I just wanted to show you, like, this is the finished report. And when I go into the heating system, there was a lot of different heating systems there. There was like 2 different mini split systems. So I got the data tags and put them in. Looks like I only got one picture of one. There was also a little boiler for a studio. So I made a whole separate report about that. And I had infrared pictures showing that that worked. I was showing where the filters could be found for the forced air side of the system. It's like I got a data plate for the heat pump. I had videos streaming to kind of show that the heat pumps were running at the time I was there. I used thermal images to show that cold stuff was coming out the ducts. I think these might have been heat recovery. Yeah, there was these heat recovery ventilators up in the attic. There were radiant floor systems in the bathroom, so I turned all those on and showed them working. So you get the idea. I showed the fireplace working. So this is just an example of showing what I did, what I was looking at, even in the face of, like, there's no defect or anything there. So something to think about. Or if it's a hot lick, you can steal or you can hate it. Be that as it may. So, all right, Hollis, you put this up. So let's see. How's your report organized, room by room? Yeah, so that was guessing that we've got about 80% system by system. That's kind of interesting. I'll go to the top here. Can you guys see the polls quiz answers? Wow, about half use a mobile app. That's pretty interesting. So we'll go.
You would expect to be more than half, wouldn't you?
I was expecting that to be maybe 75%. So that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you complete the report? On site was only 9%, back at the office 91%. So not a lot of people doing it on site. That's super interesting. How much of a report do you finish on site? And so I got some different percentages. And can everybody see these, Hollis, or is it just me?
They should be able to, yeah.
Okay, cool, great. Um, yeah, super interesting. Looks like that one's all over the place of just, I'm kind of in that 75%. I like to get about 75% of it done on site. But if I do a commercial one or the father-in-law is there grilling me or whatever, then that can go out the window. But how's your report organized? We're almost 80% system by system. So the room by room is starting to fall by the wayside, which to me, the room by room was much more like a paper report way of doing things. Do you do a computer generated 95%? So we still have 5% not doing a computer report. So a couple people hanging on to the paper reports. How much
I
you,
found that interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating. How much of your work is
A couple old
pre-listing?
timers. We got a couple old timers still.
Yep. Yeah, so we
Yeah.
got one person probably or two maybe that don't do pictures even. So yeah, cool. Welcome to everybody. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned, everybody does report writing different. So I try to be I like to lob ideas out there, but there's no one way to do it, and if it works for you, then that's great. So anyway, a couple like concepts from the first part of my class. We didn't really get into the business model thing, but these last 2 points is include background information that pertains directly to the building you're inspecting. I'll give you one more example of that. I'll just show you guys how I do my CYA stuff. I have nothing in it. If I start a brand new job, I have no information in it. And as soon as I hit gas forced air furnace, I get my heat exchanger limitation with a nice picture of a heat exchanger. I love this because I don't want to have a heat exchanger limitation in a job that has a heat pump. That would be embarrassing to me. It's really important to me that all of the things in my report pertain directly to the building. So that was the way I was able to do it. And that I gave the example of stucco earlier. And to me, like my stucco limitation, this is my siding and trim section. And as I describe the stucco, the material that siding is done with stucco, then I get a whole little descriptive background information. And I even include a picture of a guy doing moisture probing on the stucco if you really want to know about it. So anyway, that's sort of what I was driving at of like, go through your report and look and just make sure the information pertains to the building you're inspecting. Cool. So workflow tip number one is required fields. And I will kind of show you this on the back end. But for me, I can set these. I have 191 things that I'm reviewing. And as I fill stuff in, it goes away. Most softwares do this today. So it's really helpful for me. Like I take my standards of practice. I'm an ASHI member, I'm an INRACHI member, and I'm a Washington State inspector. So I try to go through my template and make sure it complies with all of those standards. And I set these various things that are red as required fields. And as I fill things out, they disappear. So that's really helpful for me. On the mobile, I can then review my required fields before I leave the job. And, show of hands for cameras on, who here's forgotten the electric panel? I mean, or the water heater, I have. I mean, it's super embarrassing. Like you get home, you're like, oh my God, I never found the panel. And, it's probably behind a painting or something. Anyway, that doesn't happen to me anymore because I use these required fields. And so if you're using software, I would really think about trying to get your required fields set to match your standards of practice. And a little tip is if you work in multiple states, just, make it the most stringent of every state. Like I said, I try to have mine comply with all those different organizations. And the most important for me is my state, obviously. Let's see. So some more workflow stuff. So this is a cool question. Do you guys think about how you work through the site? Like whether you do a linear workflow or a system by system workflow? So I would argue that everybody probably thinks they do a linear workflow, and we're all trained to, like, go around from right to left or left to right, or, start at the front and go to the upstairs and go downstairs, or, there's so many different workflows you can have when you're cruising around. My one little tip that I have learned over the years is I try to have a linear workflow. I try to kind of move systematically through the building in such a way that I know I've gone everywhere. But in the last 5 or 6 years, I have very systematically taken a moment to, like, break my linear workflow and kind of run around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I have found that it helps me find a lot of things. Your perspective changes. You're like looking at it from a different angle. You come at it from a different way. So I have built that into my procedure. So, linear system works great, but it's hard to do the HVAC in a linear way, isn't it? I mean, that's freaking scattered all over the place. There's a heat, compressor on the exterior. There's an air handler in the attic. There's another air handler in the crawl space. You got ducts all over there. You got a filter somewhere. You got a cold air return. You got thermostats. Like, the HV won't sit still. It's everywhere. Fans and exhausts, making sure things are exhausting out. Appliance exhaust, electricals all over the place. Structure, moisture control problems could be all over the place. Doors and windows are all over the place, right? So it's nice to start thinking about, like, well, what systems are broken up all over the place, whereas what systems are, like, sitting in front of me, And that's we're going to touch on that some more as we move forward. But I would encourage you, to have a linear workflow of sorts that works for you. But then think about a moment for, where you kind of take your car keys out of your pocket and leave them there, like right where you left off, and then go around and run around a little bit and try to pick up the loose ends of things, and then go back to your linear workflow. And I tried to do that 2 or 3 times now during my inspections. So yeah, I try to build these breaks into my linear system.
So
So
the
not,
the idea that you're going to leave your car keys somewhere is to make sure that you don't leave without remembering to go back there, right? What
uh,
what
di-
happens when you forget, you leave, you're trying to start the car about the time the agent drives away, having locked the door,
yeah,
and you can't
then
get
you're
back in.
hosed. You got to have another set of keys somewhere hidden in your car, right, Hollis? I used to be so freaked out about leaving the oven on that I would leave my car keys on the oven, So it was no joke. I don't do that anymore, but I did that for years so that I wouldn't burn a house down. Um, I mean, these are the weird things that we all sort of pick up. So cool. I think we had about 20%, right? Hollis had still said they did room by room,
I
which
think
is
that was
interesting.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's clung on. I mean, some room by room is probably the fastest way to write a report, because you don't really have to concern yourself with the location of your findings. Like, it's pre-built into your template you know so I think that's why people do it. The disadvantage of room by room is, like, your electrical findings are now blown all over the report, right? So you don't it's harder to have electrical all in one, give a page to an electrician and say, fix this. And I would say that room by room could be a little more confusing for the clients, because it doesn't synthesize data as well. It's more just data broken up all over the building.
Well, I think
But
it makes sense if it makes sense if you're gathering information, what you're calling this linear path, where you're gathering the information room by room, but then you would think that that your software could then format it just format it properly in the final report. But I think there's at least one report writing software platform out there that actually delivers the data that way. So
I
anybody
think
that's
that
using
there's a
that
couple where
software,
you can set fields in one place and have them populate someplace else, you know?
yeah.
And that is a way to handle it. And we've actually, we have some ways that you can build additional summary pages that let you create a separate electrical summary page or a separate plumbing summary page. And that's all automated. So that would let you do room by room, but still create, like, lists of, like, electrical. So that look into your different tools. And it seems like most people now are doing system by system. How I personally do it is system by system, but I have a chapter for every room with plumbing. I just feel like plumbing carries liability, and I want to prove that I was running it and inspecting it. So that's kind of how I do it. But again, I'm not saying my way is the right way, just the way I do it. Um, Cool. Yeah. And the room by room, to Hollis's point a little bit, it ends up by default making a pretty cohesive checklist. You end up with a lot of kind of things to check in each room. So it can be good. So some drawbacks to room by room, it can kind of create a more bloated report. You end up with lots of chapters that don't have as much information in it. I do think it's better suited to older checkbox style reports. I think it's less concise for the client. And a good summary page can help overcome some of the drawbacks of room by room.
It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to give the report to the electrician and say, "Can you go through this report page by page and pick out the electrical defects that we want you to remediate?"
That's exactly right. And I think that's probably why most of us have kind of trended away from it. I would argue that it really has clung on, and that it was a great way to do things before we had computers. And the more we have computers, I think you don't. I mean, computers, the one thing that software ought to be great at is synthesizing data into useful components, right? I mean, that's what a computer should do for us. So I think it's less useful than it used to be. All right, we'll keep moving here. So I use kind of this hybrid approach where I've got an electrical chapter, HVAC chapter, a plumbing chapter, but I do have my bathrooms and laundry and stuff are all over the place. So I asked the question to use a mobile device, and shockingly, it was only about half of the people. So um, I am I mean, look, I've done this where I started on like handwritten reports and I had my system down, man. I mean, I used to use a voice recorder and a camera, and I swore I would never use a mobile app. I was like, there's no way. Like, I've got my thing down. That's for like, guys that aren't thorough, or I just had all these weird expectations. And then, I have a software company. We had to build a mobile app, and I built one, and I've kind of went kicking and screaming into it. And now I'm telling you, you would have to pry that mobile app out of my cold dead hand. This tool can make you money. Like I am so fast and efficient with this. It helps me do a much more thorough job. And I just have nothing but great things to say about a mobile app, but it's a pain. You got to learn it. And so I have a few tips that we'll get into about workflow here. So the obvious pros of using a mobile app is it provides an easier on-site checklist to be able to kind of make sure you're checking everything so you can build knowledge into your templates. It'll speed up report writing, and I do think it does do that. If you're going to do on-site reports, it's probably the only way to do it. I can't imagine trying to do that on a computer. The cameras on phones are just phenomenal now. I mean, it's hard to get a better camera, sort of like spending you would spend way more money on a camera than you would want to bring that camera onto an inspection. And boy, this one I haven't read. I mean, speech to text. I do a ton of speech to text, and I don't know of a better way to be more granularly specific than taking pictures and I caption them, and I like the third deck post on the south deck is rotted below grade. I mean, I can be very specific about my findings, and I'm just talking. It's such good stuff here. So there are cons to meet the disadvantages with mobile app. It can interfere with your client interactions. I was not comfortable with that at first when the buyer was around, and it was like hard to kind of interact with writing a report when I wanted to talk to a buyer. And again, you guys, these are business decisions you make, but you may or may not have people come with you during the inspection. But if I'm working for a buyer and they want to be with me, I don't discourage that. That's my own business.
That goes both ways because I had the same experience when I first started using a mobile app. I felt like I was disconnected from my client, but then when I turned and looked at them, they were disconnected from me because they were off on their phone playing, doing the Wordle or whatever.
Yeah, playing
You know,
Risk or yeah, some game or something. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, and the actually it can be a nice way to buy some space from your client too. Sometimes they're a little too in your face and you want to just be able to think about things. So it can be useful there. This could be a not necessarily a con, but if you're used to using the mobile app, then the clients can kind of interfere with you a little bit more. This is a con. It's another tool to learn. I mean, I would argue that learning to use a mobile app well took me, I mean, I was a fairly accomplished home inspector at the time I started doing it, and it took me months to start feeling comfortable with it. And there's just a lot of like learning to dance, is what I call it. And this is an interesting one, this last one, but if you're not careful or experienced with the app, it can distract you. There's a word, cognitive dissonance, that we humans experience when they don't They're sort of like getting two competing bits of information. And to me, that happened when I started using a mobile app, because the question is, are you a report writer or are you a home inspector? And those are very different things. A home inspector is looking. I don't know what I'm going to say. If I'm going to get on a roof and I find a defect, I still don't know what I'm going to say about the roof yet. I'm just taking pictures, you know? So I think that's the biggest thing I needed to get my head around, was like, when am I going to just take pictures and not worry about report writing? And when am I going to actually take the time to start report writing? Because there's no sense in writing something before you know what you really want to say. Everybody with me there? You see the risk of that, you know? So I've put a lot of thought into that. So we'll kind of unpack some things there. So if you don't use voice to text and you use a mobile app and you want to, a couple tips here. I use these aftershocks things that sit on the bone of your ear, but the mic is better and they're not in your ear. So I feel like the clients don't get upset about it. And I think because there's a better quality mic, it improves my voice to text. I also use a Gboard, which is Google's version of a keyboard. I've set that as my default keyboard on my phone. I haven't gotten it yet, but I know some guys are starting to use these AI keyboards that you can buy for 40 bucks or something, and yet that becomes your keyboard on your phone, and they're having a lot of luck with that. So, you know, this is like technology and tools, and you got to kind of practice and leverage it. It took me months to get good at voice to text, but I'm telling you, if you practice with it, you can really get it down. Um, so cool. We'll jump into some of those workflows in a minute. So we got our answers to the question. Should I do it on site or back in the office? What were we at, Hollis? It was about it wasn't much on site. It was maybe 20% or less, 10%, maybe 10%, I
Yeah,
think.
I think it was. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 10, yeah, it was 1090.
And Hollis, we have people all over the country on here, right? I mean,
Well, it's mostly East Coast, but yeah, we've got a couple Canadians and
okay.
some people out from Denver.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, a lot of on-site to me is partly just your what type of buildings you're inspecting. I mean, I did one I was teaching down in Florida and we did one, and Christ, I could have done that inspection in like an hour. It was like a slab on grade. There was no attic. It was like the simplest building in the world. I mean, I could almost leapt onto the roof. It was just a really simple building. So, you know, there's a lot of Donnybrooks about on-site or not. In my climate zone, it would be very difficult because the buildings, I'm often doing big buildings with 6 heating systems and 3 water heaters, and I'm looking up codes and all kinds of stuff. But in any event, there's a business model thing, of how you want to run your business, and slightly, I think, you know, the types of buildings that you're inspecting. Um, so the answer to these questions as I was going through is, how much time do you have? You know, are your clients asking questions? Do you have another job to get to? You know, these are all things that would impact you. And the people that do it on site, I'd be interested to know if they could always do it on site. I mean, if you do Shaquille O'Neal's house and it's 20,000 square feet, I'm guessing you like do finish that one back in the office, but who knows? So on site, some advantages and disadvantages. Doing it on site, you can use your template and required fields to help you make sure you inspected all of the components. This is a big thing for me. I was convinced that you shouldn't do any report on site. You should just focus on thinking and being a great inspector. But I have found that by filling out 50 to 70% of my report on site, the report writing triggers my brain to go find things that I would have forgotten. You know, could be the main water shut off. It could be like, oh man, I didn't really see whether the dryer was venting out, or just it helps you connect all these dots. So my personal goal is to get about 50 to 80% of it. That's usually where I end up. And I have found that if I can do that amount on site, I feel a lot more confident when I'm leaving that I've found everything I want to find. Now keep in mind, that's not finishing it on site. That's just, you know, me doing a bunch of it on the mobile. So obviously if you complete it on site, your clients love it, the agents love it, they get all the information quickly, and it saves the inspector the dreaded homework. So, you know, pretty nice if you can do it on site. And in fact, I mean, when I started with those handwritten reports, you had to do it on site. You know, you couldn't, I mean, you weren't going to mail them or anything. They were like these carbonless copy things. So it was a really different business then. I mean, people would do like 3 a day, and you'd sort of write a few notes and be like, hand them this book and rush off to the next one. I don't particularly care for that business, and I'm glad mine's not like that. But So some advantages of going back in the office. I think there's huge advantages to finishing a report back in your office. You can really reflect on your opinions and think about things. I mean, I think buildings are very complicated. I think of stuff at 6 in the morning, from yesterday's inspection all the time that I would have missed or forgotten or not understood. So I try to get my reports out the next day and really think about them. I look up codes, I look up manufacturers' installation things. I mean, not on every job. I have a lot of that built into my template, but I'm always looking stuff up and trying to think about things. Proofreading, I should do a better job at than I do, but I do try to proofread. And it just, that the more time you spend on the report, the more accurate you will be. And I just think accuracy has this long-term payback for your business that should not be underestimated. If you do it on site, good for you. That's awesome. But I do think there's some great reasons to finish. And so for me, the sweet spot is, again, that kind of 50 to 80% on site and then finishing it up back at home. So we'll go over some different things on how I kind of maximize my workflow here. And to me, the goal is to try to take advantage of all of the good bits and minimize the disadvantages. That's kind of, you see how I think about this logically. I've put out well, there's advantages and disadvantages to on-site or back in the office, and mobile apps and not mobile apps and so forth. So I've kind of developed, and it's really how we ended up developing our software, was ways that could maximize the benefits of using all these tools. So this is a pretty cool list. If you want to snap a picture of it, go for it. But I use different tools in my software depending on how the data comes to me as a home inspector. So a water heater, do I need to chase the water heater all over the house? No, it's just sitting there. It's just sitting duck. Same with electric panels, same with the kitchen, same with an attic, a garage, bathrooms, laundries, plumbing, grounding and bonding. Those things are just sitting there. And often the defects are the same defects over and over and over. So I use workflows in my template for those things that are really kind of almost checkbox like, where it's the water heater needs seismic straps, the expansion tank's waterlogged, click, 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 click. So that's sort of a workflow that I have for that. I don't know can you guys see this
We
video
don't
and
have
hear it,
seismic
or
straps.
yeah?
We don't have seismic straps.
Can I get a thumbs up? You are hearing it? Yep.
Yep. Oh, the video? No.
Yeah, cool. Great.
No, we're not.
Oh, you're not. Let me try resharing real quick. Hang on.
You saw the video, but you can't hear it.
Yeah, I think I need to let's see. You can see it again, right?
Yep.
This one is made by GE.
Can you hear it now?
Yeah, that's good.
I'm going to hit
Great.
this. I'll kind of click on the side of it. Go ahead and
But now we can't see it.
snap a picture.
There it goes.
The data plate.
Yeah, we can't see it.
Into
Oh, you can't see it?
Yeah,
this
we
is
can
a
hear it. We
50
can't see it.
gallon.
Hang on.
You're sharing the Zoom screen, not the PowerPoint
Yeah.
screen. There you go.
Oh. All right.
Looks like it is 2004. So I've built into my template, as soon as I hit 2004, it's going to give me a comment that says this water heater is likely close to the end of its life. And I could pull back and maybe just get a big picture of the water heater, maybe even two. We'll get one down low just to kind of show that. And then I could add a little note. So all this yellow are little pre-made ways I can massage my comment. And the first two are, if it's a plural, these water heaters. So in this case, it's just one. This little lower one is great. I can hit this, and to best preserve this tank, you could consider a servicing where the tank is flushed. I don't want to always say that, but I think that's actually decent advice in this case. So we'll move on to the next thing here. It's electric. The straps are present, so we're good. I live in a seismic area, so those are required. A pad, none needed. Where I am, the energy code is such that if you have an electric tank on concrete, it has to have a pad. So, but this is an electric tank. It actually has a pad, but none is even needed here. So I could check both of those. There's no drain pan, and this is in a place where the leak would cause some damage. So I'm going to say none noted, recommended. You can see I've built a little orange thing in here that's like got my comments. So I'm going to go click, click. We're going to go down and we'll snap a picture of the fact that there is no drain pan. So boom, boom, kind of done that. An expansion tank is present.
So you guys get the point. I want to get you guys back so I can see you again. I was, there you are. So you get the point. You see how on my mobile, I just built, I mean, it's like a checkbox, really. I like, are there straps? Is there a pan? Is there a pad? I'm asking myself all these questions, and the software is putting the answers in, and I just need to snap pictures. So I do not do that for these things. I do it for that list that I showed before of like electric panels, water heaters, kitchens, bathrooms, because it's just easy. All that stuff's sitting there. So look at the list. Can you guys see my screen now with the roof line and stuff?
Yeah, we
Cool.
got it. Yeah.
So look at this list, right? These are all the things that are broken up all over the house, right? I mean, if you start your home inspection, you see rot on the siding. Do you know the comment you're going to use in the report yet? I mean, I don't like, because what you could do is you could have 50 repair comments. So like, there's rot over here, there's rot over here, there's rot over here. But years ago, I had an agent get really mad at me, and she's like, "You had 100 repairs, you know?" And I sort of puffed up, and I was like, "Oh, you know, bad house or whatever." But then I went and looked at my report, and I realized that, you know, 13 of them were the siding and 15 of them were the roof. And, you know, and I was like, that's really embarrassing. That's not how I should write a report. Like, it's one thing, it's the roof. It's one thing, it's the siding system, right? So we invented in Scribeware a lot of ways to really leverage the ability to kind of gunny sack your findings into one thing. So siding, decks, roof, electrical, windows, doors, structure problems. I'll show you how like doors are kind of fun. I don't know. I only use one door comment now. I'll show you decks real quick. Uh, I only use 5 deck comments. So these are like these pre-built comments I have. Tune-up repairs needed, old deck repair, replace, old deck rebuilding needed, new deck looks professional, new deck repairs needed. Right? You'd be hard pressed to find a deck that won't fit into one of those 5 categories, right? So we could do tune-up repairs, and I can go grab some of my pictures here. And we'll just do a few to bring them in. Notice how some of them are pre-captioned. I could click on one, and we support a photo captions library, so blocking is missing. So now I've added another. So I call this a parent comment, and the parent comment is super vague. Deck repairs are needed. Hire somebody to fix it. I've got text replacement. I could say decks, balconies, porches, whatever. In this case, it was decks, right? Repairs are needed to the decks. Examples of specific observations noted during inspection include. Notice how I'm not saying this is all that's wrong with your decks. I'm just saying here's some examples of why I think down here I'm going to recommend you get somebody to come out and fix the decks, right? And so I've got these pictures that I just spoke a caption onto. I put my cursor there and I hit this button, and I can make a bulleted list of my photo captions within that parent comment. So this is the technique that I use for sidings, roof, windows, decks, electrical, windows, doors. If I see that stuff, I just take a picture and I caption it. What and where. That's all I got to do. And the nice thing about that is my voice to text. Voice to text, try to speak a paragraph that you want an attorney to read. That's tough, right? Whereas if all you need to do is speak like, the deck ledger is not bolted, even it'll take practice, but you know, I've been doing it for years now, and so I use this technique all the time in my report. Sometimes I have a list of 30 bullets. Sometimes I have 1 or 2. You know, if you go to like how I do it in my doors, I only use 1 door comment now, a parent comment, and then because it was so hard for me to try to build a library of door repair comments, because it's always a different door and some weird thing. You know, there's a hole in the bottom third of the main bedroom door, and you know, the upper hinge is loose in the closet door in the northeast bathroom, or you're right. I don't know. It was always so specific. I just found it way easier to just voice to text, and I could put a list. There could be 1 thing wrong with the door. There could be 50 things wrong with the doors. And from the client standpoint, I think it's a much easier report to read because it's one contractor. You need a trim carpenter to come in and fix the doors, you know? So, uh, that makes sense. You see kind of what I'm driving at with like kind of gunny sacking things together here. So that's kind of one of my techniques for, and here's that list if you want to think about it. And you can do this in different software. We've like designed very specifically like ways to do that. But here's that list. So um, I think it's helpful no matter how you're doing it to just think that these issues come at you in different ways with these different systems. Let's see. We'll try to move on. Yeah, so then there's also gunny sack comments that I use a lot. And I use this when multiple defects with the same system, when things are the same. So stairs, I love this, old non-conforming stairs, right? So you're in an old house and what's wrong? This is a whole comment about old stairs and how they're never to code and all that stuff. I can come up here and I can say where it's the second floor in the basement or whatever. So, and then I can choose this examples of observations no during inspection include. When I double click on that, I can make a pre-made list of things that are wrong. So maybe the guardrail's incomplete and there's some wood decay or you know. You can just kind of check on the things that apply. And if you want to, you can drag some illustrations down as well. But those are little sort of gunny sack comments. I have another one here, I believe. Yeah, so you can just kind of a nice way. I have another one for Windows. Old Windows is kind of interesting. There's always tons of stuff with Windows, right? So you can just have these lists
You
of
handle windows
things.
the same way you do doors?
Uh, 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 say that again. What was the question?
You handle windows the same way you do doors, the way you described doors a minute ago?
Yeah, I do. I mean, sometimes I'll break it into different things. So like I will always do the photo captions to bullets is how I do lost seals because I can put the locations in. So I have a lost seals comment and I'll just drag all the pictures in. But sometimes there's way more than lost seals and I'll just use a window repair parent comment. They're like, hey, the following window repairs are needed. And you think about it, you could bring in so much different stuff. You could have like the window balancers are missing in the dining room. There's a lost seal in the kitchen. The window frame is cracked in the dining room. There's energy coating has failed on the south windows on the second floor. And I just drop all that into one comment. And if it's a big deal, if there's a lot of them, I could call it a major concern or something. But again, you see my technique, my workflow is gunny sacking for multiple defects with the same system. And that's a very different workflow than the stuff where I'm doing much more of like a checklist style approach. Does that make sense? You guys kind of see what I'm and
Yeah.
I think it helps make my reports more consolidated and it speeds me up. So to me, it's a double win. You're getting higher quality reports faster. That's always my goal.
And you're not leaving the agents with some long reading project at night, once they, or the next morning, when they've got other things to do. They can look at it, find, they don't need specific this window, this window, this window. They need to know windows. We need a
That's
window
that,
repair guy. We need a trim
that
carpenter. We need a framer. We need a roofer. We need an electrician.
and it's all consolidated for him.
Yeah.
And I was embarrassed when that one agent complained and I read my report. I must have said, hire an electrician to further evaluate and repair like 40 times or something. It was like, my God, that's just it. So one of my goals for report writing is trying to fool the client into thinking I stayed up all night writing the report when in fact I just want to click on stuff or use my voice. I'm a terrible typer. I don't have to type. So, but I did one for my dentist once, and I saw him at my kid's soccer game like the next day, and he looked at me. He was like staring at me. He was like, "How long did it take you to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, nice. I fooled him." He thought I was working on that thing all night, and
We
that's what
got
I
we got
want.
10 minutes. We got 10 minutes.
Yeah, cool. All right, we'll keep moving. We're getting actually close. We got accomplished a lot of what I wanted to do. So these are called gunny sacks, and we built an ability to create these pre-made comments, or you can use a parent comment with photo captions to bullets. Both work really well. So again, kind of just to reiterate, like to me, the required fields help you make sure you don't forget anything. And I wanted to bring this up for all of the 50% that don't use a mobile app. If you start using a mobile app, what I would do is just fill out your what HG would have called styles and materials. Just use your descriptive things and describe the building on site with a mobile app, and then just take pictures and use voice to text to caption them. And even if you only do that, I guarantee you, you will start to get faster at your report writing. Just describe the building, and I think it'll help you, like the filling out that, like those descriptive things that, ASHI, we have our standards of practice of you shall describe, and filling that stuff out helps your brain orient to make sure you find all these things on your inspection. And then if you get good at taking pictures with the mobile, you've got voice to text to caption pictures right at your fingertips. Those two things alone, if you do nothing else on a mobile app, I guarantee you it would let you be more, it'll help you be more accurate on site, find more stuff, and be more granularly specific as you go. And I think it'll speed you up. So again, required fields, and then like how we designed our app is you just take, if you don't choose a comment first, you just take a picture, they all go into this gallery and you can then go use them later. They'll sync up on your desktop and you can use them when you get home. And a pro tip for any newer inspectors on here, when in doubt, take more pictures, right? I mean, yeah, I never regretted taking too many pictures, whereas I do regret sometimes being like, oh man, I should have gotten a better picture of that or whatever. So when in doubt, take more pictures. I would say if you have a lot of pictures, it starts slowing you down when you're kind of cleaning up your report, but it's easy to kind of get them out of the way. So just take pictures, take pictures, take pictures. Let's see. Yeah, again, like our workflow is like you could take if you choose a comment and take a picture, it'll be nested with it. Otherwise, you can just take pictures and they'll go into the gallery.
Do you estimate cost to cure?
That is a great question. We just are building new table functionality in Scribeware where you could build tables, so you'll have a field in your observation where you could put numbers, and then when you publish the report, it'll auto-generate a table of cost to cure items. Yeah, so hit me up if you're interested in that. It's kind of newer work that we're just working on. We've been working on a bunch with several commercial inspectors for that. Let's see. Yeah, the other these are those required fields. You can see them on your home screen, which is kind of nice, so that I can quickly like pull up and be like, ooh, I've got 8 things I forgot to check there. You can also flag comments. So how I work in the field often is I'll inspect a deck and I'll take pictures and I'll just caption them with voice to text. And then I'll choose like tune-up repairs, repair or replace, or rebuilding, right? I'll choose one of those, I'll dump all my pictures in there, and then I'll flag that comment. And it's kind of cool. Really quickly on site, I've got that comment 90% assembled. And when I'm home, I might resequence the pictures and do a little spell check, and I'll use that photo captions to bullets and kind of clean it up. So the flags are actually really super nice. So takeaway from part 3, when the whole system is right in front of you, then I would build more of like a checkbox kind of a click, click, click kind of a workflow. And when you have to chase the system all over the building, think about, some kind of like a parent comment type thing. And again, this idea of a parent comment, I call it the art of being simultaneously vague and specific. You start with a parent comment that's like, you need someone to fix the electrical system. Examples of things that I noted include, and then I can be very specific of all these things I found. But I think that's very powerful report writing to both prove that you are looking at things and to keep you out of trouble. So again, parent comments and then bullets with that, I think is a really, really nice thing. And then when in doubt, take more pictures. Cool. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I realize we're not even in the full view of it. I hope I'm doing okay bouncing around between all these things, videos and PowerPoint and software.
But I think you're making some pretty valid points.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. So again, to recap, I mean, to me, really analyzing your report workflow and how you gather data on site is it's worth spending time analyzing how you do it and why you do it and what you're doing. And I guarantee you, if you put the brain power into that, it will make your company more profitable. And that's my goal for all scribers, is that your company is more profitable. And to me, profitability is three things. It's you're working more quickly, it's higher quality reports that keep you out of trouble, so the complaints go down, and higher quality reports that get you referrals because people just see your report and say like, well, we're calling that gal or we're calling that guy, right? So to me, profitability is your reports should be doing all three of those things for you. And if you can do it quickly, then it makes your company more profitable. It's really that simple. And so that's, yeah, improving your client interactions, ensuring consistent quality of inspections, and it'll save you time and make you money. So, and it's just, you can see how like I've really thought about how I'm gathering data and how I'm putting it into reports. And that's just made my company. I have a very simple company. It's me, but it's very profitable. Like I make a lot of money per hour because I can go out in the field and I can gather really good data and I can put it into a really good report quickly, and and it's lame about computers, but the truth is if you really learn a tool well, it makes you a more valuable person. I have access to data at my fingertips, so that's the reality of computers. So cool. Anybody have any comments, questions? I have a few other
You
things we
could,
could go through if we want, but
yeah,
I,
we're running
my,
out of time
yeah,
here.
my timing was
Uh,
pretty good, huh, Hollis?
yeah, it's
I
pretty
did a good
good.
job deleting,
Yeah.
making it 1 hour instead of two.
Can you tell us about your Sunday morning, about the Sunday
Oh
morning chat?
yeah, yeah. So you can follow us on. You could go to the Scribers Forum. That's Scribers Facebook group. We can let you in there. Charlie Buell tries to put this on a bunch of the Facebook groups, but we do a informal meeting on Zoom every Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific. So for all you guys on the East Coast, this is like a leisurely time. For me, I get up pretty early.
That's
But there's
interesting. You mentioned Charles Buell because he was the very first OMG speaker way back 7 years ago. He was the very first guest speaker.
That's so cool. I told
Yeah.
him I was doing this and he told me that. He's a good friend of mine and we chat
Yeah.
almost daily, but there's some very good inspectors on there. I consider myself like one of the JV inspectors. We got TJ's on here today. TJ shows up at a lot of these. It's always great to have you on there, TJ. And I don't know about you, TJ, but I learned so much on those things. Boy, it's humbling. I there's some good and bad. So anyway, you're welcome. There's, if for any reason we don't let you in, just try to shoot me a message or something. You can always reach out to me. Dylan at getscribeware.com would be a good email for me. If you let us know, we've had once or twice where we're pretty casual about it and somebody like spammed or like bombed our Zoom meeting. And so every once in a while, if we don't recognize someone or if it's like their iPhone or something, then we'll let that person in. But shoot me a message, let me know. You're welcome to join that. And yeah, I hope you guys
So
got a couple little nuggets, like a couple things to take away, that ideas to.
I'm sure, yeah, we did. I think we're getting a lot of positive feedback here. Your congratulations on your walking the fine line between demonstrating your software but not pitching it. But now, while now that we have your time limited to, we're actually over. Why don't we give you 30 seconds to at least name it and tell us where to go to find it
Yeah,
if there are people
thanks, Hollis.
interested.
As a fellow home inspector, by the way, I did 2 inspections this morning or today before coming here. So I've been burning the candle here, but I never liked going to presentations that were just sales pitches. So I appreciate that. I had to show a few things to get my points across. But yeah, so Scribeware, you can just go to scribeware.com if you want to learn more. We have a YouTube channel that's got millions of Scribeware videos and stuff, and that's the name of the company, and I'm the co-owner, co-founder. And I would argue it's really like it's really a software that is unlimited in its ability to be customized. You can find things that you can't customize, but it's pretty hard. And I come at this from, as a home inspector, like, I think all of our reports should be different, you know, like they should reflect our voice and our knowledge and stuff. And so we've tried to build a system that will let everybody do it differently. And you can see we put a lot of thought into the report writer. When I look at software right now, what I see is what I call the old guards, and you know, we all know what those are: HG and HIP. They've been around forever, insane amount of functionality in those. And then there's the new ones that are web apps, and we are not a web app. We are a cloud connected database, but that has given us a huge amount of functionality that you really won't find in any other software. If you're really into report writing and you want to use your report to make your company more profitable, I don't think you can find a more powerful tool. It's really there. We have not done all-in-one, so we don't do scheduling at the moment. We will probably build out a certain amount of scheduling stuff to try to support kind of 1 to 3 person shops. But, you know, we've had companies, big companies, come to us and, you know, Jim and Bill do sewer scopes on Thursdays and Sundays, and they charge $180. And Bill and Ted don't do sewer scopes, but they work in this zip code on Wednesday. It's like, no, you know, I don't want anything to do with scheduling. You know, somebody shoot me. I find report writing infinitely fascinating and cool, and I just, scheduling doesn't interest me much. But anyway, we integrate with a bunch of all the schedulers, and we're going to build out a little bit more stuff. Is that
Well,
a good
I hear
overview?
only good things about it. Let's call that a wrap here, but